I'm giving the watering cans a good clean today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and Darlac. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, I'm in the greenhouse today. It's a bit too wet to be gardening outside, and I'm going to do one of the jobs that I always try and do at this time of the year, and that's giving my watering cans a good clean to get them ready for the growing season. Last week we looked at water butts and how to collect and store the rainwater so we can use it in the greenhouse, and if you haven't seen that video, it is available of course on YouTube. Just search for Pots and Trowels, and of course it's free to subscribe. The reason I like to give them a good clean is because they get really dirty over the season. And I don't know whether Jill can see in there. This is an old watering can that I use a lot, a galvanised one, and it gets a bit green. It's just green algae, and if a few leaves drop in there, you can get all sorts of sort of fungal spores in there and bacteria. And potentially they can harm young seedlings and cause a disease known as damping off, where they germinate and grow and then just collapse at compost level. So we want to do as much as we can to avoid any problems like that. So that's why it's worth giving them a clean. And as you can probably see, I do like my watering cans. I've got, this is just a few of my watering cans that I use around the garden. I'm a bit of a watering can collector. If you look after them, they will last for years and years. This one is my new one. This is my pride and joy. This one hasn't really had a growing season yet. It's new and shiny, and will get lots of use for watering containers through the summer this year. This one, on the other hand, is, I know how old it is because I bought this, and this one I treated myself many, many years ago. This one is about 35 years old, and it's still going strong, and it will probably see me out and last many, many, many years. So it's just worth looking after them. The other thing to bear in mind, as well as cleaning the can, which I'll show you how to do in a minute, we also want to clean the rose, and the rose is the bit on the end. This one is a little bit battered, as you can see. They start off brass and they age to this colour, but we need to make sure that that is clean. And while we're on the subject of roses, there are different types of roses that you can get. This one is what we call an oval rose, and it will give an even spray pattern. We can get them with a coarse or fine. This is a medium spray, ideal for general watering. So these give a large oval pattern. Whereas this one that I have on this little can, I use this one for watering seeds or seedlings. And this one is a little pot rose, and this one has got a very fine spray, and this one gives a very controlled spray when you're watering, as controlled patterns. So it's worth having 2 or 3 different types of rose for different watering in and out around the garden. So pop that back up there. So what do we do? Well, first of all, we want to just give them a bit of a clean down, starting with the rose. Sometimes they can get a little bit blocked up, especially if you're getting water out of a water butt. So I always just like to get a little bit of fine sandpaper and just to give them a bit of a sand over. It's more aesthetic than anything, just a bit of a tap now and again. And that gets rid of any green verdigris on there. It means I can see the holes clearly as well. And you could spend quite a bit of time doing this if you wanted to. You don't have to get it all the way back to the original brass colour, but it does help just to make sure that there's nothing blocking those holes at all. And say we get rid of the verdigris, we can give it a bit of an inspection to make sure there are no splits in it or anything like that, and that all seems fine. So I would probably spend about 5 minutes on that and just give it a nice clean down, and it will look so much better. And then of course if we give it a blow, that will make sure that none of those holes are blocked. So that's something you can do with all the roses. Same really with the watering cans. You know, they get a little bit dull at times, so any bits of grime on there, again, only very lightly. We're not trying to take off any of this galvanising at all. This is there to protect it, but it just gets rid of any loose flaky bits and just make sure that everything is all okay. So I'm just going to work my way around. Sometimes you get a bit of dried on algae and a bit of dirt in the groove at the base, so it's just a case of getting the paper in there and giving it a bit of a rub down. Sorry, Jill, getting you there. So that is really just to get rid of any loose bits on there. The other thing though is the ferrule. This is the bit where the rose slots onto. And again, that can get a bit dirty. So it's worth just getting the sandpaper and just giving it a bit of a buff up. It just makes it easier to get the rose on and off, because just a little bit of a build-up, it doesn't take much. So if you keep that nice and clean and shiny, it means when you come to put the rose back on, it slots on there easily. So that's the dry cleaning, just to get rid of dust and dirt. But what we need to concentrate is on inside. So two ways you can do this. One is you could use a proprietary spray, a household cleaner that's probably got a bleach in it or a bacteria killer in there, and just give it a squirt in there. And you could then leave that for a while to do its job and then rinse it out. Or the old-fashioned way is to get a bucket of water. This has got a little bit of soap in there, just so it works, and I put a little bit of bleach in. You don't need a lot, and that's quite good for where we've got the green algae there. So what I'm going to do is just to get a little bit of this water, and I'm just going to give that. Got a really old brush here, and I'm just going to see, and you can probably see there that it's actually just starting to remove that green algae on there. So it's going to give that a good clean. So I can just about get my hand in there and give it a good slosh round to give it a good scrub and get rid of everything. So just spend a few minutes doing that. So there you can see inside it's much cleaner. It's had a good scrub with the detergent. I've rinsed it out to get rid of the residue in there, so it's nice and clean. And then finally what I'm going to do is just to get the cloth and I'm just going to give the outside a wipe down. I know I've given it that very, very fine sand to move any dry loose bits on there, but this will just finish it off nicely like that and get rid of any dry dust on there. Might as well do it all while we're doing it. No need to rinse the outside, to be fair, because there's such a small amount of detergent in this, it's not going to do any harm at all. So that's nice and clean. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get back the rose that we fitted. That was just lightly sanded to get rid of any sort of verdigris on it and muck that had built up. But I'm going to just give that a bit of a wash inside here. Just again to make sure that water actually gets inside it. Give it a shake, drain it off, and I would rinse this as well. I would just give that a rinse in some clear water, clean water, just so there's no detergent in there. And then once it's been rinsed, of course, it can go on there. Now, although I mentioned that we use rainwater that we collect in the water butts for watering in the garden and the greenhouse, for actually watering seedlings, I use mains water because, again, in the water butt there can be bacteria and fungal spores that could affect those small seedlings. And when I'm using it generally in the garden, I change the rose and I put one on with a larger hole in a coarse rose, because that way it won't block up with any little particles that are in the water butt. So good job to be doing at this time of the year. Make sure everything's clean and ready for action in the spring. And all I've got to do now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more. I can stop and have my coffee break. Thank you for watching Pots and Trowels. All the watering cans are clean now, and we will be back again next week when I'm going to be showing you how to start preparing potatoes for growing in the garden. So we'll see you then. Bye.